How's it going, everybody? This is Cameron White with White Light Astrology, and welcome back to your favorite weekly horoscope. What the fuck is going on in the universe for December 2nd through December 9th of 2019? Thank you guys so much for being here and liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you guys, and I'm so glad you guys can be here with me this week. Last week was a lot more fun. We had that new moon in Sagittarius. We had Jupiter at the last degrees of Sag right before it went into Capricorn. But this week, things get a little bit more serious. Now, with last week, Venus went into Capricorn where that serious tone started to come more into play, but it was a little bit more fun. It was a little bit more us going towards that direction, not necessarily the universe kind of giving us like a push towards that direction. However, with this week, we have Jupiter entering Capricorn, where we're now going to be having Jupiter in Capricorn, Venus in Capricorn, Saturn in Capricorn, Pluto in Capricorn, so the South Node in Capricorn. So there's a lot of planets in Capricorn this week, and that's why I think this week is going to be more of a serious tone, which doesn't mean it's going to be bad, because we're going to be talking about why Jupiter in Capricorn will be good here in just a second. But also this week on Monday, we have Venus conjoining the South Node, which makes this serious tone a little bit more almost nostalgic in a sense, because that South Node has to do with our past. That South Node has to do with what we're bringing with us to the present, and that South Node part of it really has us kind of making us look at this week like, you know, where are we going, or where are we coming from, and where are we moving towards. As well, this week's highlights, we have Mars sextiling Venus, which I really do think is going to give us a little bit, you know, on the or over the edge when it comes, or what's the word I'm looking for? We also have Venus sextiling Mars this week, which I really think is going to kind of give us a little bit of an edge when it comes to our energy. Venus in Capricorn can be a little bit, not necessarily dull, but lackluster. And that Mars in Scorpio can be a little bit too extreme sometimes. So as they sextile each other, that's going to be a really nice balancing of energy. However, after that, we have Mercury leaving Shadow this week. We finally get to get over that. The only thing with Mercury leaving Shadow is it only has 2 degrees or 3 degrees really to go through, because Mercury stationed retrograde at 27 Scorpio. So it'll go through 28 Scorpio, 29 Scorpio, and then it enters Sagittarius, where it's in detriment. So we only really get a few days of good Mercury energy after this retrograde. But then as we end this week and go into next week, we have Mercury finally moving into Sagittarius and into its detriment, where things are going to not necessarily be bad at all, because there's no like harsh aspects to Mercury for the most part. It's just when it comes to Mercury, you know, communication is a very viable part of our lives, and we really want communication to be working well. And when Mercury goes into Sagittarius, that isn't always the result that you get with Mercury. However, with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the horoscope. So starting today off Monday, we have quite a bit, not a lot, but just 2 really big things. The main thing is Jupiter's moving into Capricorn. Now, this is where Jupiter's going to be for the next year, so get comfortable with it. And the big thing is while Jupiter is in Capricorn, it's going to be co-present with Saturn and Pluto, and it is going to be conjoining the South Node here soon. Now, with Jupiter in Capricorn, it's in fall. You've probably read a lot of depressing things about this and that it's going to suck. And I'm here to tell you it's not. Jupiter is the greater benefic. Jupiter's main job and its purpose, it's been written about this for thousands of fucking years, is to make things better, is to do good things, is to bring more of something, to bring an expansion to something. Now, the problem is Jupiter's really good at the mental stuff, at the things that go on in your head, on ideas. Jupiter's the visionary. The problem is where Jupiter has to do all this work, because that's Jupiter in Capricorn. It has to kind of, you know, I made this analogy on Twitter this past week of it's where the architect has to meet the general contractor, and the architect, you know, can lay out all of these grand designs, but it has to go into the field and actually construct the building themselves. And Jupiter going into Capricorn, you know, Jupiter's mostly used to making up the ideas. It's not used to doing all the hard work. And that's where Jupiter can get frustrated in that idea of Jupiter is in fall in the sign of Capricorn. That's where that can kind of, you know, be, or that's how you can kind of interpret that in a sense, because you're not used to doing, you know, you're used to doing the fun visionary stuff with Jupiter like in Sag, but with Jupiter and Capricorn, you've got to make that vision come to life, and that requires work, that requires discipline, that requires responsibility. And as Jupiter moves into Capricorn this week, this is kind of that time where if you have this great vision, this is the time to build it. And this is the time to get excited about it. This is a cardinal sign, so this is about initiating and beginning. And this is Jupiter. This is about expanding this area. This isn't going to, you know, make everything bad disappear and make everything, a whole much better. But Jupiter is trying to alleviate a lot of the pressure that Saturn and Pluto and the South Node in Capricorn can be giving you. So while Jupiter goes into Capricorn and this starts beginning, this is going to be a really good time to really look at what needs to get fixed, what needs to get addressed, and if I have this vision of how things can be, what work do I have to do in order to create that? The other thing, though, is on Monday, and that's why I said Monday's kind of a heavy day, there's a lot going on, is Venus is conjoining the South Node. Now, Venus is also the other benefic planet, all about value, money, luxury, relationships, romance, sex. As she's in the sign of Capricorn, which also has Saturn in Capricorn, this is where Venus gets a little bit more serious about what she wants. Venus is a little bit more serious about playing by the rules and being ordered and having some structure. Venus can operate well there, because Venus can be a smooth operator if you're a big fan of Sage. But anyway, besides that, with Venus going on the South Node, this is where it kind of gets a little, not weird, but more of like, you might actually have to address some shit here. The South Node is, if you get into astrology and you look at the eclipses and the nodes, like, they're so potent, they're so, exact, they're so specific and clear. And the South Node is like what we're letting go of, what we've brought with us in our past, what has worked before in our past, has everything to do with what's behind you and the relationship you have with what's behind you. Now, Venus, that planet of value right there, that's kind of giving us this inclination going, what have I done in the past that has worked? Where have I implemented systems and operated in a way that created value, that created stability, that created that security? And this is where Venus in Capricorn kind of goes, I can implement that same system that I did then now, and I can make the changes that I did back then here in the present. And those things that I did back then and the lessons that I learned back then can help me now in this moment. And so I really do think on Monday there is going to be quite a shift in our perspective with what we're doing and how we're going to do it. And this is going to be a really good time to look in your past, because we've all been through this. We go through the same shit all the time. Life's just a bunch of cycles. What have you done in the past before that has helped you in a certain situation, and where can you bring the good parts of that and implement it into your system today? Now, as we do move into Tuesday, we'll have the moon move out of Aquarius and move into Pisces, where, last week I talked about this moon in Pisces transit, giving us this opportunity to be open, giving us this opportunity to look at things through a different lens. And that's not necessarily through the correct lens, but being able to look at all of the perspectives and kind of see which one's going to help us, align ourselves with the trajectory that we're wanting to go towards. And as the moon goes into Pisces, it's always an awesome time to just kind of be with your energy. It's not about being fixated. It's not about starting stuff. It's about really embracing the all of what has happened and trying to understand it for yourself. And that's a little bit confusing, but welcome to Pisces. Anyway, the moon will move into Pisces, and it will start to make a trine to Mars and a sextile to Venus. So that openness of our ideas and our emotions may inspire us to be a lot more active and to take action and initiate whatever it is that we're wanting to continue. And that's that Mars and Scorpio energy, being like, the second we can do it, we're going to do it. The second we can pull the trigger, we do it. And as the moon starts to sextile Venus, this is where it can give us a little bit more support when it comes to, hey, if I'm more open about these ideas and my emotions, I could find that value still. I can really still find that structured, playbook that will help me, with where I'm at right now. And that Venus in Capricorn energy is very stable. It's very secure. And while the moon sextiles Venus, this is going to be a positive time to just be open with the flow. Like when you're in sales, you don't just stick to the script. You play your role with, socializing with another human. Like you kind of have to bounce off what they say, but you still stick to, you got to sell your product. And that's kind of like that moon in Pisces sextiling Venus, Go with the flow of the conversation, but remember, you've got a job to do. But also on Tuesday, on the 3rd, that's when we're going to be having Mars sextile Venus. And there's a lot of sextile energy going on. I really like it because that sextile energy is that comradeship. And I think I said that word right because I said that in a couple episodes ago and I fucked it up, but maybe I said it right this time. Correct me if I'm wrong. But anyway, as Mars sextiles Venus, that's kind of like that hand in friendship, like that hand in support. And Venus in Capricorn is like, I want things to go this way. I want to be orderly and fashion. And Mars in Scorpio is like, I'm just trying to do something. I'm just trying to be engaged with whatever it is that's in front of me. And Mars in Scorpio has a lot of energy to pour out. And as that sextiling Venus, that's really encouraging to be more, active when it comes to that Venus and Capricorn stuff. Like, where are we creating more value in our systems? Where are we creating valuable systems that we're implementing in our lives? This is Capricorn. We're talking about stability. Where are we placing more value on that? And where can we charge our energy up to focus on that? Then as we go into Wednesday, that's when we're going to be having the moon conjoin Neptune, and it's going to be making a trine to Mercury. And I really do think while the moon's conjoining Neptune, trining Mercury, it can get a little confusing on Wednesday. And that's not always a bad thing. That moon conjoin Neptune really gives us that opportunity to get really spiritual with it, kind of feel ourselves. But as it trines Mercury while it's still in Scorpio, be careful about what you latch onto. If you have some type of, it's really easy for Mercury and Scorpio to see one thing and just hold on to that, or hear one thing and hold on to that. Be careful about what you're holding on to, because it may not be worth holding on to at the end. You may be trying to hold on to sand. It's just going to fall through your fingers. But on Wednesday, as that moon conjoins Neptune, again, this is about really saturating that openness, really seeing all of the perspectives that you can. As it trines Mercury, there may be something there for you to find. You might actually be able to find that needle in the haystack. And then as we move on to Thursday, on Jupiter's day, we have the moon moving into Aries, making a square to Jupiter. And we finally have Jupiter's first aspect in Capricorn, which is a good old square to the moon in Aries, which I think is going to be interesting, because the moon in Aries can be it's easy to get frustrated, because the moon is very emotionally charged, and Aries, it's like, it's got to be this way, you got to be combative, you got to be blunt and upfront, and so it can be a little bit stressful, and you can feel a little bit arrogant sometimes. And as that squares Jupiter, it can be frustrating, because it's like you're wanting to make things work, and Jupiter and Capricorn, it's not like it's not like Postmates. You can't just like click a button and your food arrives at the door. Like, you got to go in the kitchen and make that shit. And as that moon squares Jupiter, this is that point where we start to go, hey, if I want to create this stuff, this is the time to initiate. And I really think on Thursday, that's where we'll finally get that, after having that moon in Pisces transit, helping us be a little bit open. That moon in Aries transit is really going to help us get charged up to implement some action and to take charge and to start what we need to. Then as we get into Friday on December 6th, that's when we're going to be having the moon in later Aries start to square Venus and Saturn, where this is where it gets still a little bit more frustrating. The moon in Aries wants it all to be done, wants it to be their way. It's like your way or the highway. It's very confrontive, and it's very, can be a little intense. But Venus conjoining Saturn and Capricorn is like, you can yell at your boss all you want, but they're still your boss, and you're still going to have to do what they say unless you quit. Like, there's no way you're going to get above them unless you somehow work your ass off enough to be able to rise up above them. Anyway, the idea of the moon squaring Venus and Saturn is, while you may not necessarily doing what you want to, I don't want to say that. What I want to say is you may not be doing things that are comfortable or things that are easy, but it's going to be those things that you do that create the results that you want. Because Venus conjoining Saturn in Capricorn isn't fucking around. Like, if you want, like, Venus conjoining Saturn is like, if it's time to be serious about value, it's time to be serious about money, it's time to be serious about the things that we enjoy and what we want to get. If we have goals, we're going to reach them. And that moon in Aries transit squaring Saturn Venus, it's going to be a little bit uncomfortable. But how hard are you willing to work to get the result that you're reaching for? And then as we get into this weekend, on Saturday, on December 7th, we finally have Mercury leaving Shadow. And like I said before, this is we only have a few days of Mercury in this not even in post Shadow, but out of Shadow in its own new territory in a decent sign. And as Mercury leaves Shadow, this is where things are going to become a lot more clear. That's when I've been making this analogy of the sniper and, getting our target kind of locked in. This is where we kind of get everything dialed in and we start to see our target a lot more clearly. And this is, I don't want to say the time to shoot, but this is where that analogy of seeing things clearly, everything's lined up, your scope's in view, you're at the right, yardage that you need to be. This is the time where you see it all. And what I would say with that is, what are you seeing, and what does that mean you're going to do with it? If you see something, is that going to cause you to do something different, feel something different, go a different way? All I'm asking for on Saturday is, as Mercury leaves Shadow, what are you seeing and what is being brought to you. This is Mercury. This is all about images, logos. It's all about what's being communicated, and sometimes that requires us to read between the lines, because that's Mercury and Scorpio's job. It's kind of to dig under the gunk. So what are you seeing? What did you dig up? What did you discover? And lay it out on the table. But then as we get into Sunday on December 8th, that's when we're going to be having the moon move into Taurus and make that first conjunction to Uranus. Well, not the first, but you know what I'm talking about. The moon's just going to be conjoining Uranus as it moves into Taurus from now on for a while. But as the moon goes into Taurus and we're looking for that stability, we're looking for that security, we're looking for that exalted moon feeling, it's conjoined Uranus. We got to be innovative. We got to be different about it. We got to see different perspectives of this. We got to be able to, I made this analogy in my Uranus and Taurus video, but it's like having to get from one iceberg to the other. Like, it's very slippery stuff, but you kind of have to make that jump and do the best you can to hold on to that ground that you're on. And that's, liberating. That's exciting stuff. That's very, gets your adrenaline going. And so as the moon does conjoin Uranus and go into Taurus, this is where we'll start to feel a lot more innovative and creative and have more security in our actions and within ourselves, within our emotions, because that's the most important thing. You're never going to do anything unless, your emotions are in the right place, at least enough to get you there. But as the moon conjoins Uranus, be innovative, be creative, find that stability, and because you can do it. But also on Sunday, we have Venus sextiling Neptune, which actually, I do talk a lot of shit on Neptune, but I kind of like this transit. Venus is in Capricorn, making things very real. Neptune's in Pisces. Venus's exalted sign, really kind of saturating the colors and bringing a lot of, different perspectives, creative influences and, dreamy perspectives. And Venus and Capricorn being so raw and serious and real, this nice relationship between Venus and Neptune's kind of like, hey, you can be serious, raw, and real and still get that dreamy aspect of things that you wanted. You could still be, define your boundaries, be clear about what it is that you want, and still have fun with it and still make things magical. And so I think that's going to be a really exciting transit as we go into Sunday. But also on Sunday, we also have the moon making a trine to Jupiter as it's in Taurus. And I do think that this is going to be nice, because now that the moon's in its exalted sign, it's feeling comfortable, it's feeling ready, and it's trining Jupiter now in Capricorn, where that Jupiter and Capricorn energy is going to start feeling a little bit more positive, because we might see the results of it a little bit more. But then we get to Monday, we finally get to next week. That's when we have Mercury moving into Sagittarius, and it moves into its detriment sign, which it sounds super bad. It's not super duper bad, but what's important though is Mercury and Sagittarius, Sagittarius the bow and arrow, it can kind of go and go and go and go and go and go. It's kind of hard to find the point sometimes. And while Mercury's in Sag, you don't want yourself to be going and going and going and going and going and not ever, writing anything down. You can have all these ideas, but you gotta have something written down. And that's my kind of, advice with Mercury and Sag versus like Mercury and Pisces. Mercury and Sag, it's not that it's bad that, Mercury and Sag, it's time to be vocal about our beliefs, about what our vision is, and it's going to be a time to change all of the logistical stuff about it, because you can make a plan from, A to B, like from destination, or from place A to destination B, and you can have that plan, but the logistical stuff might change in the way, or might change along the way. And that's Mercury and Sag. Along that journey, the logistical stuff's going to change, and be open to that change. Go with that change. But just know, you are going to get there, and you do have to have some type of plan to get there. You can't just keep taking side quests and going off this way and this way. You got to get to your destination. And that's the hard part about Mercury and Sag. But also on Monday, we have the moon making that trine to Saturn and Venus, so there is that sense of locked in stability. There is that sense of, yes, I know what I'm doing, I'm comfortable with what I'm doing, and we're finally fucking doing it. And I think that's going to be an exciting way to start next week, since this week is kind of just about getting comfortable with the new energy. But with that being said, that's what I got for you guys. Next week, we have the full moon in Gemini, which, hello, new information, hello, understanding stuff. I think this is going to be our last breath of fresh air before we get into January. And then we have Venus conjoining Saturn next week, as well as Mars trining Neptune. And with Venus conjoining Saturn, that's really just locking in a lot of those things that I said earlier. And that Mars trine Neptune, we're going to talk more about that next week, because that's going to be a little bit intense. But thanks again so much for being here, guys. I love and appreciate every single one of you, and I'll be seeing you next week.